Good morning. Well, good afternoon, everyone that's rolling in. Um, cool. So thanks for everyone for coming. This is our first. Well, let me introduce myself first. I'm Eitan Stern. I'm the director of Legalese. Legalese is a legal practice. We deal specifically with the tech and creative industry, and so we're very involved in different facets of industries. We work with entrepreneurs and growing companies to help them grow legally and safely. And a lot of what we do is dealing with businesses and dealing with entrepreneurs. So for the last two years, we've been running a monthly webinar on legal topics, and we've just put that to bed. And this is the first of our new format of webinar, um, in which we're going to be having a fireside chat with an entrepreneur who's running an interesting product, or doing some interesting work, and chat to them about what they're doing, their journey to get there, and a little bit more around their story and touching on some legal aspects of their product. So thanks to everyone that's joined us. We've got some people streaming in here, and then we've also got some people watching on LinkedIn and the different socials. And I'm sure people will be watching this on replay on YouTube. So I'd like to introduce our first guest for our new series called In Layman's Terms. This is Craig Newborn. Craig is the CEO of PayJustNow. So instead of me giving Craig's intro for him, Craig, nice to have you here. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about what PayJustNow does and what you do at the company?
Yeah, sure. So for everybody, my name is Craig Newborn. I'm the founder of PayJustNow, and currently make all the coffee in the business. But I'm actually the CEO. I run the business as well. And yeah, I'm super excited to just have a general chat around what PayJustNow is all about and the journey.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, in many ways, it's a CEO's aim to become the sort of person that just makes the coffee. Are you at that point already? Are you that unoperational?
Absolutely not. No, I mean that's the dream, right? That's the dream. They often, they say the difference between a founder and a CEO is that a founder's job is to be fired from all roles.
Yeah.
I mean that's the success of a founder, whereas the CEO is very much still in the operational stuff. The team has grown significantly in the business, and we're still scaling the business significantly, but yeah, we've got quite a big team now.
Okay, so I'm going to get onto PayJustNow later and a bit about what you do then, more about the company, but I want to start with you. What was your journey to get to this point? Was PayJustNow your first venture, or what was your start of entrepreneurship in your life?
So I suppose the start of entrepreneurship, I've always been super interested in business, and I read a lot around specific business concepts. I'm highly inquisitive around different business structures, and how in general business works, right? From how does a coal mine make money, all the way through to a fintech lending engine, how it could work using AI. I read an extensive amount, and then my first business started at school when I was in standard 8, grade 10. A friend of mine approached me and said, listen, hey, you seem to know a lot about sound equipment and music and that kind of stuff. I would like to be a DJ. Would you like to partner? And we buy some equipment, and we rent this equipment out to other DJs like myself. And we started this basic rental business where we bought a whole lot of really cool speakers and mixing desks, and this was even before CDs were around. CDs are like literally just launched. So
vinyl DJs, yeah.
It was literally, so we went and borrowed some money from our respective parents, put it together, and we built this little rental business, which by the time we went into matric, was doing quite a substantial trade, and we were supplying nightclubs with all their rental equipment.
Awesome.
And that was the start, right? Literally.
And it carried on from there?
Yeah, it carried on from there, where went into university at Stellenbosch, and from there literally started a software business while at university. My first software business at university, which I sold in my second year of varsity. And then has just subsequently gone on to either acquire businesses and build them, or start businesses and scale them, type model.
Amazing. So safe to say PayJustNow is not your first venture that you've been in.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
And as you reflect along your journey, it's probably a bigger question, so not such a soft opener, but it sounds like there've been a bunch of successes along the way. Were there any failures along the way with the businesses?
Yeah, so I think it's really important that you must, you need to try and push and fail fast, right? If you can. There were lots of ideas that I would say that we started with and then subsequently changed into something else. So I wouldn't call those failures. I'd call those sort of optimization kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of just the general trajectory. Yeah.
But there was a business that I bought in 2008, which we were looking to scale and digitize, which we just got hit from the side from a legal regulatory perspective, and the entire world changed for us pretty quickly.
Okay. That's interesting.
And we had to disclose, we had to shut it down because we didn't have the model anymore, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Was there a law that changed, or had you not done
100%.
Kind of
so it was a business up in Africa, and specifically the law in that specific market changed, which outlawed the type of business the product we had. So we had to pin it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm gonna kind of put a pin in that, because we'll touch on that more when we discuss some of the credit regulations around PayJustNow. Okay, so you're the seasoned entrepreneur. You've been through university. You've had you've started businesses. You've bought them. You sold them. What's the origin story of PayJustNow? I mean, today it's quite a big company. It's pretty recognizable. You see the logo all over. We were just chatting before the webinar started. You guys had a big Black Friday, so people are using the product. What's the origin story to it?
So the origin story is I've always built businesses that always B2B, where we're serving a business type customer, a business type client, be it a government client, be it a corporate client, that type of stuff. And in 2019, the early part of 2019, I was incredibly bored at the time. And I thought, well, let me tackle quite a big problem and let's try a B2C customer, right? Let's order a B2C type business. So I started researching different businesses at the time, and I came across probably 4 or 5 different concepts that I thought were super interesting. And one of them at that stage was buy now, pay later.
Okay.
And it then started at a braai, actually, where I was researching this topic, and a friend of mine was out from Australia for Christmas, actually 2018, and he then said to me, "Well, who's doing this kind of thing in South Africa?" And he spoke about
that's lay-bys, right? I mean, buy now, just pay later. I mean, it's the same concept, or is it different to a lay-by?
No, it's different, right? So lay-by is where you obviously the goods remain behind the counter per se.
I see. Okay.
And you have to pay them off, and only once you've paid them off do you get the goods.
You get them. Okay.
Whereas buy now, pay later is you walk out with the goods immediately after making a form of payment, but it is a interest-free and fee-free product.
Okay, I hear you. Got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
To you as the consumer, right? You're the person that's buying it. I mean, it's probably easier to explain it as a concept, but if you're buying a pair of tires for, let's say, 6,000 Rand as an example, we would split that purchase into 3 installments of 2,000 Rand. There's no interest or any fees for you to use. And then we align those payments to when you actually get paid. So typically you'd pay a third immediately to activate the product, a third whenever you've elected in the next month to pay it, and the third the month thereafter. And it's that simple. There's no like monthly fee. There's no interest. There's nothing. As long as you pound time is the key.
What's the model then? If there's no interest, there's no fees. You taking up the retailer gets paid a little bit less. They basically split the fee with you.
Exactly. So we charge a slightly elevated fee to the retailer for the value, right? The value is you get the sale today.
For sure.
You move the stock today. In other words, you don't have to keep it behind the counter and then the customer cancels after making 11 out of 12 payments because he doesn't want the blue shoes anymore. And then you with out of season stock. So we solve your stock problem as a merchant. We help you with conversion because we're helping people with aligning cash flow for them and affordability. And now we also give you as the merchant the opportunity to communicate with this base of customers, which is now quite substantial, right?
So you're then you're a B2B business, right? Like from what you talk about, it's your retailers are your main clients and the main part of your marketplace. That's what you build your business around, the retailers.
Yeah. So for me, it is that sort of double-sided element to it because the customers, but you also need the retailer. So the more customers you have, the easier it is to onboard the retailer. The more retailers you have, the easier it is to onboard the customers. But from a demand perspective, right? So that's the let's call it flywheel / jockey wheel that you have to continue to drive the whole time. But that's the thinking. But you have to resonate with your customers' needs, be it a consumer or a merchant, to be successful.
So let's then go back a second. So you're at this braai, you have this idea. What happens next?
What happens next is I literally lock myself in a cave in a room for a couple of days, and I literally iterate through different lines of thinking, different ways of how I would bring it to market, that type of thing.
You're not coding. You're not a coder, right? You're formulating the product. Okay.
We're just merely formulating product, understanding what I would need to be able to launch a product
for sure.
to the market. What does that team look like? And I clearly identified very early that I needed very specific skills to be able to launch this type of product, right? So, so the journey then immediately started with finding those key individuals to solve that. I do own tech businesses. I own big software businesses, which I've started previously in my past and still own them. So I come from a tech background. I've got a deep understanding of tech, but I mean, I last wrote code a very, very, very long time ago.
Sure. Yeah. I was listening to a podcast recently with Daniel Ek from Spotify talking about his research, and he's now started coding again, but he's not allowed to actually push code on Spotify, but he's building up to what he can. So tell me about this team. So you're a sole founder, right? Or did you have other co-founders that were part of this team?
So I originally came up with the concept and bought the domain name PayJustNow, which is a very South African concept.
Yeah, it's a great name.
And I bought the name off a chap in India, in Bangalore, who happened to own the domain. And I literally had to get him to sell it to me across the world and take a leap of faith that the domain would arrive once I'd paid for it. But then after that, as I said, I had to identify very key individuals that had to start this journey with me. So I identified two leads, let's call them that, and essentially co-founders that started this journey with me. One was, I knew that merchants were really important to me, so I approached an ex-merchant retailer who I said, listen, you know what these people need. I need you to be the face of that element for me. And then on the other side, the part that had to resonate with customers is South Africans have a terrible experience of service, and and trust. So I found Mark, who I deem an absolute specialist in this world of establishing trust and building out service. So Greg joined on the merchant side as an ex-retailer, and I got Mark to focus on the consumer side and establish trust, because I knew that without trust, you're dead in the water on building that side of the platform.
And so maybe let's dig into that. Like, if you think about when you thought launching the business, what are the biggest challenges that you went through? Was this thing of building trust for your brand the biggest challenge, or were there other things that resonate as big challenges to launch?
So I think the tech is obviously quite complex. While we make it look very simple, it's incredibly complex behind the scenes. But I think I had a very strong understanding, and I had a very strong tech team that I could lean on, who were able to solve that for me. For me, the biggest element was trust. Like, if you couldn't establish trust out the gate and fit, like product fit, if you can't establish product fit, then you won't get trust. Like, people will be, but like, why are you making me do this? Or I don't understand why this is happening. So for me, trust was, and trust comes in many forms, right? From the consumer's perspective, why should I trust this platform? Will it deliver on what they say? Like what it says on the tin, really? Will that actually happen? It's too good to be true. Like, how could it be free?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Massive challenge. And then on the merchant side, why should I trust these guys? Right?
Yeah, okay.
So trust for me underpinned the majority of the thinking and the strategy to get live.
Okay, so it's funny when most people talk about starting their startup, the biggest challenge they refer to as like getting funded or figuring out the regulatory spectrum. But for you, it's this thing of building trust, and I suppose that makes me think that value is still very much alive in what you do, or is it now the trust is built and now it's kind of that aspect's done? Like, people recognize the brand, so now it's done, or do you think that do you find that you still have to continuously work on this?
Yeah, so Mark, who specialized in this particular area, came up with an unbelievable analogy and concept, which is the way we think and the way we operate, and he's got this concept of a forest, where he says that, you know, the forest is an amazing place when, in terms of an ecosystem, you have big trees, small trees, things that live on the floor, things that, you know, climb the trees, and it essentially creates its own moisture and climate and all these types of things. But the reality is, you can't have a forest with only small trees or only big trees. You need you need big trees to shelter the smaller trees, to establish the climate. So the concept we went with was focus on very specific niche trust elements and establish those big trees. And once you've established those big trees, then you go after the saplings, because if you can solve the saplings and you can get the saplings to trust you, all saplings become a big tree, as long as they are protected and feel protected.
Yeah. So what were those big trust elements? What were the big trees for you guys?
So for us, it was you know, establishing with brands that I think were trusted brands by customers, right? So from a brand perspective, that trust was like, I trust the brand.
Yeah, so leveraging on the goodwill of Nike or whatever it is in order
right. So and then on the second side, trust is all about do what it says on the tin. Right? If we say that you can phone us and someone will answer, someone will answer. If we say we will respond within 2 hours, respond within 2 hours.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. All those little things matter. And I feel that about, I mean, that definitely resonates with me, right? It's like we also work in a profession as lawyers, which there's a lot of mistrust that people don't naturally love lawyers. And, you know, we've iterated how we do things and innovated in many ways, but, you know, it still comes down to pay what, charge what you said on the quote and deliver the work in the allocated time that you've said it will come. And if you can stick to those things, it's you know, a lot of your job is done. Because maybe it's like people don't expect you to. So if you do it, it kind of stands out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell me briefly. So cool. So you've got this idea. You've got a team on board. You've got this these flagship kind of an ethos of the company. What is complex about offering credit in South Africa? Do you consider this credit, or is this not a form of credit to you?
Yeah. So we do see it as like a form of credit, right? Because we are advancing the opportunity to pay over time. And the way I see it is it's very similar to, you know, going to a doctor and your card not working, you know, because the bank is offline or whatever, right? And the doctor says, no, don't worry about it. Just pay me next week, right? Or pay me once the bank. You can walk out the door, but then pay me later, kind of concept. And that's how we viewed the world, right? So our legislation around this particular space is very strong. I think our Credit Act is unbelievable and really strong. And makes provision for these types of things, right? Because it's life. So we are heavily governed around in terms of the Act. And we then enter into a credit agreement only when you miss your agreement to repay us, which is an incidental, right? So that's where the Act kicks in. And the Act is well governed there as well, right? So in other words, the doctor said, please pay me by Monday next week. You don't pay him, he is entitled to charge you a late interest, you know, at a given rate, etc., etc.
Yeah, so, for sure.
So, you know, that's the part that that I feel South Africa's got right. But what's hard about giving credit in South Africa is responsibility, right? People, I think possibly credit's been given away too easily in the past. And it's created a culture where you buy things on credit, which you shouldn't.
So how do you guys think about that? I know that before we opened up this chat here, we were chatting about that you don't give credit for things like groceries. So tell me a bit about how you think about where the ethical lines on credit are.
Absolutely. So, you know, I think credit is something that can be incredibly empowering if used for the right items, right? And for the right things. And where we draw the line is we don't finance things where the utility is shorter than the term of finance, right? So in other words, what you get out of the item. So a great example would be financing food. We don't think you should use credit in any form for financing food, because you're going to eat the food and you'll still be paying for the food you've consumed, and you get yourself a vicious cycle. And that's not a cycle that I believe is the right cycle for you to be able to unlock future opportunities for you. The cycle I believe very strongly in is this thing is going to give me 12 months worth of utility, yet I am going to have finished paying for it by month 3, right? So I'm going to buy a suit for my job, for my first job, because I want to look professional and I want to be taken seriously, etc., etc. And the suit will last me 12 months, but I'll be done paying for it after 3.
Right. Yeah. No, I only owned one suit. I owned it for my article, so it lasted me 24 months, and then I think I
exactly, dude. Right? Exactly. But it's that kind of thinking, right? You've just got to start.
Yeah.
And it's
100%. It's good, and it's good that you're thinking about that, right? I mean, I imagine you work within a world where people can run relatively reckless businesses as long as they stay within the ambit of the law and find ways around them. I mean, the one that comes to mind is a lot of these businesses that will sell like PABX systems or phone systems to companies and lock them into kind of weird cancellation terms and we're, like evergreen payments, right, where the payments keep coming on, and the industry is in many ways focused and built by companies that are looking to leverage off gaps in the law or leverage of where the law allows them to be predatory. But what you're saying is that the success, trust is so deeply built into the business, and part of that is having ethics at the core of what you do, so that your customers can trust that you're not trying to screw them over, but trying to help them, uplift their lives or buy the things that they want or need.
Yeah, which is, I mean, like I think of stories now that give me absolutely cold shivers where customers like share their story or their journey with us, right? And it's like you're actually changing this form of credit is actually changing the way people live, and it's changing their outcome of life, right? Yeah, I mean, there's just story after story that it's actually like it's heartbreaking in certain aspects, right? But you're just happy because you've been able to unlock this. I mean, one comes to mind, which people laugh at me all the time when we mention it, but we we onboarded this one merchant, and she specializes in oversize bras for women. And they're like, really well made. They're very expensive because they're custom.
Right.
And we had one of her clients write into us, and she wrote into us and said, guys, you don't actually understand what this is doing, one, for my business, but also two, for my customers. So
right. Yes, and they can access it.
So one, they can access it. So what typically happens is these women suffer from back pain and all these kinds of things, which can be completely debilitating, and actually doesn't allow them to be able to work and or work a full day or be productive. That kind of stuff. It can be completely debilitating. Then from a medical perspective, these things to solve are incredibly expensive because they're cosmetic. Then cosmetic surgery is not covered by medical aids. So the access to funding to solving the problem is even worse.
Yeah. So you found this one magical thing at the start of the process so offering people credit can essentially make these big differences in people's lives. It's it makes a lot. I mean, if I think about my life and things that I have around me, like a lot of the stuff that we have, our cars, our homes, are not are bought on credits, right? Like it's a fortunately or unfortunately, it's a core part of our society. And I suppose what you've done is you found a way to open up a product to more people around us. But I'm keen to hear about that. How do you think about, well, how do you guys vet people for the product? And are there regulatory requirements for you to vet people, and how does that work? And how have you guys looked at vetting and welcoming people onto the product?
So I think there's two sides to that, right? Because we've got two different customers. We've obviously got the consumer side, and then we've got the merchant side, right? So I think let's talk consumer side first. Consumer side, yes, we do vet. We do ask for consent to vet. It's a fully automated and fully digital process, which is literally under a minute and a half to complete.
Oh, wow. Okay. Amazing.
And during that process, we do validate your identity. We do validate your credit behavior and your credit report from the credit bureau. We do evaluate your affordability on you being able to pay for these things, and can you afford the payments going forward. And all of that, it takes a couple of seconds to do, but we do prompt you to validate certain information, like, where do you live? We check that. We check your identity, that with Home Affairs, that we're not being defrauded in terms of
you are who you say you are.
You are who you say you are, kind of thing. So from the consumer perspective, that vetting is a fully digital, fully automated process. And we then do vet again at the time of transacting. Are you buying the right thing? As we just touched on, right? So are you buying utility or what exactly are you buying? Because you might be granted a limit, but if you're buying the wrong things, we'll still say no. It's not just about giving.
Okay.
Amazing. It's not about a limit and then you're off to the races.
And then you can go about whatever you want. And So I mean, when I think about like the biggest challenges in launching a business like yours, I'd probably think the one is repayment, right? Like, can you chat about that? How's it been going? Do people pay it back? Do you have issues with that? What's your metrics around that?
Yeah, so I mean, repayment is quite an interesting concept, right? So again, this element of trust, which I touched on, Mark, focus. He's still focusing heavily on this, right? And this is his one of his key philosophies in life. But what we find is that we've entered into a social contract with you, right? So we say to you, hey, listen, those $6,000 tires,
Mm,
we'll give you the $6,000. Just pay us back $6,000. Don't pay us $7,000. You don't need to pay us $7,000. You don't need to pay us $8,000 or $12,000, whatever a full-blown credit agreement would look like for you. But just pay the $6,000 back. And people resonate to that. They go like, okay, hang on, this oak's not actually even asking me for any more money. All I need to do to be able to use this free money or free system is pay the money back. And
yeah. So you've
and that sort of unlocks a wheel for people and go, I want to use this free thing. I want to keep this free thing. I want to maintain this free relationship.
Yeah.
So our repayment behavior has actually been exceptional.
Wow. Okay.
Over and above that, obviously, we do a lot of work in the background. We've got decision science teams that specialize in understanding different risk profiles, affordability profiles, and we have to continually optimize those changes.
But something about staying within the ethos is what encourages people to pay. People
we have
pay
people
because
coming back
fair.
a year later going, you know what, I'm really sorry. I just want to be able to use this again. Can I pay?
Right, can I pay the bills?
And they come
amazing.
to us. We don't even phone them. We don't even engage them.
And who bears the risk? Is it you guys? Is it do you have a finance partner, or is it the retailer? Craig?
We bear that risk.
I think oh, there you're back. Sorry, you disappeared for a second. Yeah. Sorry, I was asking you about the risk. Who bears the risk?
So we bear the risk as PayJustNow, and that's obviously a massive benefit to the retailer. The retailer gets the opportunity to not worry about this type of stuff. It's not part of their core business, etc. But it does make funding this kind of business a significant barrier.
For sure.
Because it's very cash hungry.
I can imagine. So is there a finance partner, or have you guys raised that finance, or do you work with a bank for that?
So I mean, initially we bootstrapped the business ourselves, and the business started growing really quickly and has continued to grow as fast. So in 2021, I sold the majority of the business to Weaver Fintech, which is a fintech business out of Mauritius. And they own a number of assets in sort of this kind of space. And they brought in the financial firepower and backing to us to be able to unlock the growth, both from a book perspective as well as growing the business to scale.
Yeah, from a marketing perspective and whatnot. Incredible. Just one more question on PayJustNow, and I want to chat a bit about your general thoughts about South Africa's fintech regulations and fintech in general. How has the market responded to the product? So when you say it's growing and it's scaling, I mean, do you have any figures around adoption or monthly users or anything like that you can share with us?
So I mean, we're over 1 million South Africans who've trusted us, right? On board.
Incredible.
And we're continuing to grow anywhere between 50 and 100,000 new customers a month, depending on which month it is and utility, etc. So from a consumer perspective, it is growing incredibly fast. And we're noticing that multiplier effect, right? Is that the more people that know about the product, the more people that realize the product does what it says on the tin, the more tell their friends, the more friends, it sort of amplifies itself.
Yeah.
So that's growing. And then on the merchant side, we're available at over 8,000
Wow.
place
Incredible. And that's physical and online.
Physical and online. So from a scale perspective, it's completely flying and going in the right direction.
That's really, really brilliant. Yeah, it's a fascinating what you're saying. Also, before we started, we should never chat before the call starts because a lot of the interesting stuff comes out then. But yeah, what you're saying is that people knew about the product, but would only use it once once a friend had used it. So it's like makes me think of that network effect, right? It's like the bigger the network grows, the bigger that trust grows, and you're able to scale through that. It's fascinating.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think of it a lot. I mean, we think about legalese in the exact same way, right? We're lawyers we're a trusted relationship. For years we slammed money into like Facebook ads and Instagram ads and stuff, but then it was like the sharp realization. It's like, well, when you want a lawyer, you're not going onto Facebook. You're asking your friend or a colleague or someone that you recommend. So all of pretty much everything that we do around marketing now is run around like leveraging off the existing client base that we have, existing contents, the contacts and stuff like that. And I really do believe that's the future of growth on the internet, right? As the internet becomes less and less of a trustworthy place, if you can build a community around what you do, I think you sit in a position of power, which is really interesting. I wanted to shift slightly onto like your general thoughts and views around South Africa's credit and South Africa's regulatory environment for fintechs. From a regulatory perspective, was it difficult to get this up and running? I know you've touched on that. The credit is highly regulated in South Africa. Were there some hoops that you had to jump through? Was there a license that you had to get? How difficult was? I mean, I know you said you had that business in the past that was shut down overnight when a law changed. From a regulatory perspective, was this a struggle to get up and running?
Yeah, I think the first part on the reg side, like on the asset protection side, I think that's and when I say asset protection, I'm talking IP protection, that kind of stuff. Owning the name, owning the trademark, owning the word mark, that type of stuff, I think is like massively underestimated by people.
Yeah, okay.
It's like it carries massive value to potential investors, to being able to defend your position in the market, those kinds of things. So getting that out of the way is like it's something that just has to happen.
Yeah.
So I would say that for me, that was I mean, I had been through the journey before, establishing brands, trademarking, word marking, etc. I've done that before. So again, having a great legal partner is massive, right? And being able to unlock that element, because I think without that, I think without that, no matter who you approach to scale your business, to fund your business, it's like, what am I actually putting the money into, right? How easy is it to defend your position? So I think that was the first one. So the let's call it asset protection element. The second one for me was legislation around specifically the Credit Act, and how we needed to be licensed, etc. Again, completely different set of legal partners, but
yeah, for sure,
specialists, and I think that's the key. Again, we find a specialist, and then they helped us navigate that particular element, which I think was really good. And I think the key is partner with a specialist, right?
Yeah.
I think people maybe underestimate the legal fraternity in terms of, you don't have a lawyer that can do everything for you. Go to like a specialist like you guys, right?
Yeah.
Where you're focusing in fintech. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's certainly our thoughts on it, right? It's like what we try to do is offer a practice that has got these specialist lawyers that only deal with tech and creative companies, right? So we don't need a lawyer who can write anti-nuptial agreements, but we certainly do. We need a lawyer who can do poppy policies or something like that.
Exactly, right. Yeah. Exactly. So then obviously the people underestimate that in South Africa. It is, for the right reasons, quite a heavily regulated environment.
Yes.
said, you've got the Poppy Act, you've got the Credit Act. These are quite, and in
Yeah,
some
they've been
instances, I think
yeah.
world leading policy.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, our consumer protection, our credit policies are certainly world leading. It's like, I think, there was a time where consumers had a rough time in South Africa, and our Consumer
yeah,
Protection Act is offered a hell of a lot of protection, and it's taken very seriously by retailers.
yeah.
Um, okay, and from and licensing, was there a license that you needed, or
No,
you
so
guys
no,
got around the licensing?
so no, we don't need specific licensing. From because we are only offering incidental as and when
Right.
required,
Okay.
similar to a doctor. But we are governed by the Act, and we are registered as I can't recall the exact term now, but there was new legislation that came out last year, I believe, where it's something authority. I can't recall it off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
that doesn't matter. I mean, it matters. So I'm sure there's someone on your side
Yes,
who's got control over that.
yes.
But that's interesting that it's that for you guys, you managed to understand the regulatory environment and launch the product that works, and hasn't been this constant kind of thing for you. As an entrepreneur in the fintech space, how do you feel our local fintech ecosystem is functioning? So it seems like you've got some contact with the people from the Mauritian tech ecosystem, fintech ecosystem. I'm sure you do work with companies from around the world. How do you think South Africa's fintech ecosystem is looking?
So I think on our South African side, I think there's definitely elements that I think we do really, really well.
Mm.
I think we are blessed in South Africa with great people, and with high work ethic, etc. We are great at innovating. We're a small market, unfortunately, right?
Mm.
Like, to get it right in South Africa and to make money, you've got to have a significant penetration on your TAM, your total addressable market.
Yeah.
So I think those are challenges, but I think the world has now become digital into a sense where, you can work anywhere in the world per se, yet live in South Africa, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think from a regulatory perspective, I think South Africa, for the more serious stuff, I find some of the processes quite incumbent and quite difficult to be understood. They may be that for a reason, but I do find that there's, if you're going into the insurance space or into the banking element of the world, I think there's a lot of red tape there, which I think it could
in South Africa more
in
so
South
than other
Africa
countries. Yeah.
specifically. And I think a lot of our legislation is what I'm going to call branch based.
Okay.
Where the legislation assumes that insurance is sold at a branch. Someone walks in, and those people have to be authorized, and so I think that's quite complex. And the same with banking. It's assumed that banking is sold in a branch, and the world is changing. So I think there's a probably legislative update required.
For sure. I mean, South Africa's got what, had 7 major banks. Now we've got 2 more digital banks that have started, which is great. I mean, in America, if you've got regional banks in small towns that have their own regional bank. Now, there's a flip side to both things, right? It's like, it's very
100%.
unlikely Standard Bank or Absa will go bankrupt, whereas America, you do have banks that go bankrupt. So, it's, I think that the regulations have to fit the economy that it's working for. But I hear what you're saying is that in some ways, we're not hitting it perfectly right. Like, we are, in some aspects, we need to lower our regulatory bar to allow business to function.
Yeah. And then I think the second one for me is access to capital is incredibly hard in South Africa.
Right.
I think we've got the capability to build unbelievable businesses, as been proven a number of our businesses that have globally. I think we've got the right human capital, but not necessarily the money. And I think that's so. I think from a getting money in for investments, I think there's a lot of work that we need to get.
And that's from a regulatory perspective as well,
100%.
right? Like there's exchange control rules around that of why companies don't want to invest in South Africa because it's tough to get the money out afterwards.
I met with some, one of the big funds. There's a big investment conference at the moment in town, in Cape Town at the moment, and it was quite interestingly what their perspective from in investing into South Africa. They're happy to invest into South Africans, but not South Africa.
Right. Which isn't a good look.
Yeah, which is not a good look, right?
Yeah.
So there's concerns around foreign exchange risk. There's concerns around access to getting my money out. There's complex taxation, which makes it complicated. So if you ask me what should South Africa do,
that's actually my next question. If you were in charge, what's one change you'd make to the regulatory framework for the fintech sector to make it pop?
I think fintech is one of the areas where where it creates a significant opportunity for high value employment. People don't understand how we the size of our business in terms of actual people, and how we service 1 million plus customers, right? So, our service team that handles all the chats, phone calls, emails, anything that is service related for our consumer and merchant team is 12 people for 1 million customers.
Wow. Okay.
So,
amazing.
So there's a lot of tech in there that helps those 12 people, right? But it's being able to scale that kind of business. So if I was in charge, I would probably set up a tax lower tax jurisdiction, low tax business park type thing, or business foundry that gave fintechs a tax break to establish here, because possibly with conditions that people need to live here, right? And I don't think that would be a problem. I think you'd get people living here, and by them living here, they would spend their money here. Well, they'd have to.
No, I quite agree with you. It's like, one of the challenges for fintechs here is that they can't hire people abroad to work here because our visa regulations are misfocused, or not focused on growth of the economy, but focused more on security of keeping people out. So I totally agree with you. But it's interesting. We run a podcast called Big Fish Stories, and I interviewed the founders of the Delta, who are business like development studio. They resonated a very similar point to what you're saying. Like, it's difficult in South Africa because it's a smaller addressable market. So you need to be a magic company in order to scale. Which it sounds like PayJustNow has got that little gap and found a niche that you guys are exploiting, or not exploiting, are taking advantage of. And then the other thing is, like, it's if you want to grow the sector, you need to be aggressive about finding ways to encourage capital to come into South Africa, because it's not necessarily going to come from South Africa. And I agree. I think those things, the one is difficult to address from a regulatory perspective, but the other one is complete regulatory sort of thing. I totally agree with that. Just towards kind of wrapping up, Craig, what's next for PayJustNow? What do you guys have the cards? So I know from now you probably just finished Black Friday. You're probably heading towards Christmas. I think for the cards for you just want to get to the end of the year and probably take a bit of a holiday. But when you start strategizing 2024, what are you guys doing? Are you launching new products, or are you launching internationally? What's next for you?
Yeah, so from our perspective, 100%. Just finished Black Friday on a very big high. We've done incredibly well, and we've seen significant growth in a number of all the different verticals. Waiting for the end of the year, or working towards the end of the year, is definitely high on everybody's card, and obviously taking a break, right? It's the work-life balance kind of piece. I think in terms of our 2024 pictures, we are we're investing double what we invested this year in terms of the business, in terms of scaling it, and
Amazing.
putting the hammer down. We think there's a gap and an opportunity to launch and scale that. We have launched some really great features now in the latter part now of 2023. Like we've launched our wallet, which helps us with refunds, those kinds of things. So it simplifies the refund process for a customer. They can immediately, as soon as they get a refund, they don't have to wait for the money to go all the way back to their bank account, which takes
They can respend it, yeah.
Straight spend it again. So I think 2024 for us is scaling that kind of product to its full potential. I mean, I can't give too much away as to what we're doing in 2024.
Fine.
But considering that we're doubling our investment.
Cool, brilliant. And I like that's what you're saying. There's still a lot of room to grow in South Africa. And for Craig personally, is this another venture that you're going to work in and leave, or are you planning the next thing, or do you feel like you've got a few more years left in PayJustNow?
No, absolutely. As I said to you, like what works for me is that we're solving, I want to say, real customer problems. If you know what I mean, we're solving that for the South African consumer, who I think at this time, high rising interest rates, this kind of stuff, I think the product is in a sweet spot for the customer.
Totally.
And personally, that's part of my journey. That's part of my journey to unlock this thing to its full potential. So yeah, I'm definitely around for a couple of years.
Awesome. Sounds brilliant. I'm not sure why anyone would use a credit card when you can just pay just now.
Don't say that. Don't say it.
Awesome.
Exactly. I'm thinking.
Craig, really, really good to chat to you. I don't know if there's, we're kind of running towards the end, but I'm going to see if there's anyone who's got questions. You're welcome to pop it into the Q&A box. Probably should have mentioned that earlier so people could have sent them in, but I don't know if no one has yet. So I'm going to assume there might not be any questions, which is cool. Thanks so much for joining us, Craig. I don't know if there's anything you want to say just before we wrap up.
No, thanks for the opportunity, right? I think these kinds of conversations are really important conversations. And how could we better this industry, right? We all, South Africa as a whole, I think, benefits significantly from unlocking this type of industry, both from an employment perspective to making our tech better, making our capability better as a nation, and delivering value to, like, real value to South Africans, right? So yeah, I think it's a really important. Your mission is quite an important one. So
awesome.
Please continue with it. I think it's a really good format, a really good initiative, and I think you guys have to try and make it happen.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that there's a hell of a lot that you can learn from people's journeys, people's stories, getting a little bit of the insights of what it takes to bring a product to market. So entrepreneurs can learn from other people's challenges, see the resolve and the strength that you have to get through them. And yeah, me personally, I just really like stories. I like hearing the stories of not too dissimilar to what you're saying. I like hearing how things are built and how they happen. But awesome, Craig. Thank you so much for joining us. This is going to go up on YouTube. So if anyone out there wants to share it, we'll post it there so you can. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do so on the Legalese website, and not too hard to find to get hold of PayJustNow. Pretty easy to get signed up as well. Thanks so much, and we will see you guys next time. Craig, all the best.
Thank you. Thanks. Cheers, guys.